Okay, hello and welcome to part two of my Mappening is Happening class called Battlemaps. We're going to talk a little bit about how to create nice looking battle maps in as little time as humanly possible. And for that, I've made a quick short presentation, shouldn't take too long to get through this. Yeah, so what does make a good battle map? Um, for me, a good battle map should always have a theme. So think about why are your players there? What enemies are there? What happened to the place? So the more you put into the background of a place, the better it's going to look later and the more sense everything will make. Now, you already want to kind of have take into account what kind of encounters or traps or environmental effects your players might face, because then you can design your rooms around that idea. And then, of course, you and your players need to have enough space to move both monsters and players around. So you don't want to make everything a little bit too small, which is something that a lot of people do, particularly at the beginning. Um, the more space you have, the more fun it will be for everyone. But of course, all of these rules are just nice to have. You don't have to put them in, or maybe you want exactly that. Maybe you want that your players are not able to move around properly and they need to work around this issue. So you can feel encouraged to do whatever you like. It's just a guideline to have a nice looking map without too much of a hassle. And then, of course, a hidden room somewhere is always something neat because players are super happy if they find something like this. And as I said before, environmental hazards are a great way of sending your group in a certain way or making encounters more interesting. Now, when you make your map, it's always a good idea to just have a sketch. I personally use Excel, but there is nothing that stops you from just taking a sheet of paper and drawing it down there. Um, I would write down the rough size of a room, what is inside that room, and yes, yeah, if there are any specific enemies in there, I would also note that down. So you have all that information already there on your sheet, and then when you get to the actual map making, you can work around that. Now, when you have your sketch, so I originally wrote this for tiled. How exactly to do this in tiled, I'll show you, so don't worry about the slide too much. Basically, when you draw, there's one thing that you definitely want to take into account, and that is already have more space than your sketch makes you believe you need, because in the end, every room will be ever so slightly bigger than you expected it to be. And then when you draw, remember to use lots of layers. So you might want one layer that is just black, which is your background. And then on top of that, you have the layer which is just the floors. And then on top of that, you have the walls and maybe the doors. And then on top of that, you have your objects. The more layers you do, the easier it is to fix something afterwards. If you notice, oh no, that room needs to move two spaces up, you're screwed if you have not everything in layers. Um, when you're designing your maps, keep in mind how many players you have. If you have more than 6 players, corridors that are 10 feet wide will make everything a lot more smoothly. Particularly if you have like 3 melee characters, they will be always in each other's way. And that is not a fun experience for the players. Keep that in mind when you design stuff. Um, Well, and then for the encounters, use stronger monsters or monsters that have less variety. That way, when you are in the combat, you will be very quick with your rounds, so the players get their turn quicker. I know this is more a DMing tip, but also when you're designing your maps, you have to take this into account, so that's why I'm mentioning it here. And then outside of combat, try to design your rooms in a way that you can use initiative for players to investigate in an order instead of just saying, oh yeah, everybody, what do you want to do? And then 10 people are talking at the same time. Um, there are a lot of different softwares. My personal preference is tiled. Now, Tiled gives you 8 to 16-bit map style maps. I personally liked that style quite a lot, but I can understand if people don't like it. For me, the main reason why I used it is I need sci-fi maps and maps on a modern setting, and it's really difficult to find those either to buy them or to make them with most softwares. So I just decided I'll use tiled because there are tile sets of literally anything that you can imagine online. So one of my particular favorites is just using RPG Maker tiles, but in the end, anything that is in some kind of tile format you can use in the software. Now, there are many alternatives to tile. The two most prominent ones are Dungeon Painter Studio and Campaign Cartographer. Dungeon Painter Studio is the cheaper version, which is not quite as fancy, while Campaign Cartographer is considerably more fancy, but it also has a very steep learning curve. So if you pick up either of those two, be uh, be prepared to put quite a lot of time into learning them. And then of course there's always the option to do it in GIMP and Photoshop. From my experience, the maps in GIMP and Photoshop look the best. However, I am not willing to put the amount of time into making a map that I would need to get a good looking map in Photoshop. Dungeon Painter Studio and Campaign Cartographer, the amount of time that you spend is roughly equivalent to the amount of time that you would spend in Tile. So you don't gain or lose anything from using those ones. But as I said, for sci-fi, I just found that Tile is the better alternative. And then if you have any questions on the theory, feel free to ask them. And don't worry, there will be a handout which will summarize everything that I've mentioned here and gives all the relevant links. So to tile sets, to how to draw a really good mapping map, really good looking map, and to various other things that are bits and bobs that I've collected over the time of me making maps. And I'll wait 20 seconds now, and then I'll restart the stream if there are no questions. And I'll wait 20 seconds now, and then I'll restart the stream if there are no questions. And I'll wait 20